accomplished neurosurgeons. At the Cuzco Archaeological Museum, Dr. Fernando Caballesi, professor of neurosurgery at the University of San Marcos, demonstrates.
These skulls here are just a very small sample of the tremendous amount of skulls that were found in the graves of the ancient Peruvians. I think that all in all, we have studied more than 10,000 skulls that have been unearthed. Now, these are some of the instruments that they used. This is called the tumi knife, which was used this way just to open the scalp. This cannot be used in the bone. They used, to open the bone, they used other bronze instruments like this, just to pry up the bone, like here, prying up the bone. There are some other odd instruments like this, just to make these indentations. And there are at least two dozen different other instruments that were used also. This one here is a very interesting specimen. It shows a very persistent surgeon. You find here that this man suffered 4 operations, and he survived every one of them. Either it was a very sick man or a very persistent individual who operated on them. But he was a very good technician, because after all, these areas, especially these 2 openings, are right over very, very dangerous sites that even right now, with all the techniques that we use now, we would just be very much afraid of operating in these sites. And this man really survived these operations. In Calca, near here, near Cusco, where about, I would say, 85% of these skulls show healed trephanations. 85% of survivals from skull operations is a pretty good and excellent result.
At the Yerkes Regional Primate Center, scientists implant monkeys with electrodes. The experiment stimulates the brain with radio waves and thereby controls behavior. Are today's scientists seeking knowledge already gained by similar experiments performed centuries ago? In 1947, a Bedouin boy found the first of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the caves of Qumran. At least 2,200 years old, they bring us closer to the original Bible than any other source and contain clear references to holy ones descending from the heavens. While biblical scholars study the scrolls for their theological implications, other scientists have looked to the Bible for evidence of extraterrestrial visits to the Earth. An aerospace engineer at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, Joseph Blumrich, has found in the visions of Ezekiel a technical description of a spaceship.
The prophet Ezekiel describes 4 encounters with spaceships. At first he saw clouds, fire, and he heard noise coming out from the sky, out of the north. And as the vehicle approached, apparently it came rather quite in his direction, he observed what he calls living creatures. What Ezekiel calls the living creatures had straight legs and round feet, or calf's feet, sometimes they're called. And it was the description of these landing legs that made me take the book of Ezekiel serious from an engineering point of view. I have had the opportunity about 10 years ago to work with my group in my office for the development of such a landing gear for an unmanned lunar landing station. For that hypothetical vehicle, we developed the landing gear and what we call the footpan, and what Ezekiel would call the round feet.
Translating Ezekiel into engineering terms, Mr. Blumrich had these artist sketches made of a landing vehicle supported by 4 helicopter units.
One of the interesting examples of Ezekiel's ability to observe and to describe are the faces he sees on these living creatures. He sees 4 of them, an oxen, an eagle, a man, and so on. They are located at the top of these helicopter units, and consequently they contribute to his impression of having some living creatures in front of him. What they actually are is quite interesting. Now, some helicopters, and particularly in this case this one, needs protection, just some hood around to protect them against dust or weather and so on. And such sheet metal structures will have cutouts, will have humps in order to accommodate levers or rods which are below them. And they do have, they may have the distinct appearance of faces. We have a number of such face-like structures, like for instance the Gemini capsule. Then we have very interesting feature that looks like a monster, and every one of the audience will remember to have seen faces in rocks, in old trees and tree stumps.
Jericho was built more than 9,000 years ago. Here man has lived continuously for a longer period of time than anywhere else on the face of the earth. And here remains one of the most puzzling of ancient mysteries. Great walls 12 feet thick made the city impregnable. But Joshua called upon his priests to blow their trumpets, and the walls came tumbling down. But how? One theory holds that an earthquake tumbled the walls of Jericho. An earthquake that was part of an enormous planet-wide catastrophe. Around the world are indications of great disasters that might have caused the gods, themselves colonists on an alien planet, to flee impending doom. Did their departure inspire all the myths of Atlantis? Could there have been several colonies, lured by time into the one Atlantis first reported by Plato? Are legends, in fact, the histories of visitors from afar who colonized the earth? Plato told of a fabulous kingdom that was then more than 9,000 years old. Whatever fragrant things there now are in the earth, or woods, or essences which distill from fruit and flower, grew and thrived in that land, wrote Plato. They constructed buildings about them and planted suitable trees. Some of their buildings were simple, but in others they put together different stones, varying the color to please the eye and to be a natural source of delight.